Thank you. I'd like to call the school board to order. It's August 10th and it's 6 o'clock. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance if you're able? We will begin with a motion for the approval of the agenda. Is there anyone would like to move that? Okay, Mary Adams moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Jay. Any other comments or questions?
Just a point of order, we moved over school board meeting norms. I wasn't sure if we were reading those or not.
Oh, I'm sorry. We did. I skipped that. We'll do that after this vote. That's okay. Would you take the roll?
Adams? Here. Hall?
Here.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Lunn?
Yes.
Manley?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Kramer?
Yes.
Dunnigan?
Yes.
Baki?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
I have asked Lori Kramer to read the school board norms.
Be prepared, be on time, value and respect each other, exercise thoughtful deliberation and conversation, be professional at the board table and when visiting with the general public, speak up when the norms are not being followed, and advocate on behalf of students and keep the community in mind.
Thank you very much. We will begin our meeting with some public comment. I first want to say that, we're all adults, and I know that emotions are high on some topics, and we're here to listen and to hear what you have to say. And we welcome you, and we're glad you're here. You will notice that you are entitled to 3 minutes to speak. There will be a timer set, and you'll hear a buzz when your time is up. And we ask that you then sit down and let the next person step up to the mic. Just as a kind of a hint, make sure that you're not repeating other information that other people have said, because that time will go by faster than you think. So don't try to speak to your particular issues and not repeat what was said before you. Okay, I have to read this public statement before we can begin. State law requires that an individual providing a comment at a meeting provided to the governing body in writing their name and address. Public comments must be pertinent to the district, may not interfere with the orderly conduct of the regular meeting, may not be defamatory, abusive, harassing, or unlawful, and may be prohibited if an alternative procedure exists to bring that particular type of public comment before the public entity. The public comment includes confidentiality, exempt information, or the public comment is otherwise prohibited by law. The board may limit public comment in accordance with state law. Individuals wishing to address the school board must complete a public comment card, submit it to the school board secretary before the meeting begins, and wait to be invited to speak. Each person may speak for up to 3 minutes. No individual may speak on the same topic more than once. School board members shall not engage in a response or enter into a debate about any issue brought before the board during this portion of the meeting. Public comments and concerns will be directed to the superintendent of schools, who will address them in accordance with the policy adopted by the board. Are there any questions from the public? Okay. We will start with the public comment. The first person that can come to the mic is Miranda Clevin. And make sure you turn on the mic, Miranda. Thank you for coming.
Yes, button. There we go. Good evening, President Baki, members of the board. I'm here to offer my perspective as a parent of 3 graduates of Grand Forks Public School and a 4th child that's currently a senior. When I think about the impact of the Ray Richards project and its proposed pilot on the school district, my first thought has to do with revenue. It's important to note that approval of this project and its pilot will not result in a loss of existing revenue to the school district. Given that, I suggest that the next consideration for the school district should be related to continuing to build and maintain strong relationships with community partners. Relationships are important. Everything is harder without good relationships with others in our community. The Ray Richards Golf Course is a long-standing, unique recreational feature that benefits the whole community, and this project is very important to UND. Over the course of 14 years with children in year-round athletics and as a former member of a local youth sports governing body, I have seen great improvement in collaboration between the city, UND, the Park District, and the school district, most noticeably demonstrated by the development of the Altru Sports Complex. The city and UND, as well as other local public agencies, are collaborating well on issues that directly benefit the school district, such as shared use agreements for facilities, including this project. Therefore, this project is another opportunity for UND to be a good partner to Grand Forks Public Schools, and likewise for Grand Forks Public Schools to maintain a good relationship with UND by supporting a project that will benefit its partners and the community as a whole. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your service to the community.
Thank you. Next, Jan Lee.
I've got a question, doesn't really fit with all the other topics tonight. The busing system. It was announced the end of May that they're going to start charging the kids to ride the bus. And I believe it's $525 for the year. Then there was discussion that they might be looking at kind of like the lunch thing. You get a card when you ride it. I know some kids who ride it off and on during the winter and maybe only one or twice a week or a month. Are they going to be paying the same price as the one who rides it twice a day, 180 days out of the year? Or I was up at the school a month ago and they said a meeting was going to be held and a decision would come up. I tried calling today to see if anybody knew any answer, but nobody's answering the telephones. So has the decision been made?
We'll have Ryan, the business manager, address that with you after you're done speaking.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Keith Lund.
Well, good evening, President Bakke, Vice President Dunnigan, Superintendent Brenner, member of the school board. Keith Lund speaking here in favor in support of the Ray Richards UND redevelopment project. I spoke to the combined board of the school district, Grand Forks County, and City Council a few weeks ago. I touched on the need for housing in Grand Forks, and I believe that strongly today. We've learned about the low vacancy rate over many years and the growing community and the opportunities we have in front of us. So developing more housing is important. Quality of life is growing importance. A project was referenced tonight. You know, as I think back about all my years in economic development and even working for the city of Grand Forks, it spanned 30 years. Urban centers have grown because they've recruited people from smaller communities around them. And so there's just really a limit to how that can happen. And the goal today, and should be the goal of everyone, is to create an environment and a community in which people want to live, both from an economic opportunity standpoint and a quality of life standpoint. People are coming to UND. We want to retain as many of those graduates as possible. People are coming to our community for the career opportunities that that we're developing, and we want to make sure that they stay in the community. So I think this project creates a quality of life amenity that would be important and continue to move the dial from that standpoint. When I spoke earlier a few weeks ago, I said I keep coming back to the fact that, this property is not on the tax rolls, and it's an opportunity to really change that dynamic. I talked about in the context of taking a non-revenue generating asset and converting it to a revenue generating asset. I first moved to Grand Forks in 1987, and why anybody would care about that is because at that time, the Ray Richards Golf Course had not paid property tax for 25 years. It had been off the tax rolls for that long. Fast forward 39 years later, and this is living proof of that, it still has not paid a nickel in property tax. These opportunities don't come along very often. Again, I've been here for 39 years, and to my knowledge, this is the first real development proposal that has had an opportunity to take this property and convert it from non-property tax paying to property tax paying. And I understand that there's a revision of the original proposals that's going to be presented to you tonight, and I hope that that and the opportunity that is presented itself with this project is enough to move the project forward and move it across the goal line. Thank you for your consideration and for the work that you do on behalf of the community and the school district.
Thank you. Jay Smith.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, board members. I have questions, I guess, about the Ray Richards development. If the profits for this project are so narrow that they have to have tax relief, is this really a good opportunity or not? I mean, is this going to float? We keep hearing about how UND has been running it, and they've not been taxed, and they're $400,000 a year in behind. So I don't believe it's up to the city to support that kind of a venture. UND is a state institution and should be supported by the state. I think the city needs to concentrate on taking care of its schools, police, fire, and other city services, and not state institutions. Another thing, I don't know if this probably isn't the place to do this, but maybe we need to kick it back to city council. I want to start attracting developers and other businesses that want to support our community, that want us to come here, that want to help us grow, help us to pay taxes, to support our fire, our schools, other city services, and not take from the community. And again, that's probably not up to us, but maybe we can kick back to the city council and they can find some other organizations that can do that for us. When I was younger, a retired person was upset that they had to support the school systems, that they supported the school systems when they had children in the school. I believe it is in the best of all our best interest to support our schools. But I do not wish to support a golf course, and make no mistake, if we give them a tax break, someone has to pick that up, and that will be up to the citizens and other businesses in the city. So just some things that are troubling me, and I thank you for the therapy session. Have a good night.
You're welcome. Andrew Krausnick?
My name is Andrew Krausnick. I own Albatross Indoor Golf Club, started in 2012 and still operate today. I'm a product of both Grand Forks Central and UND. I ask that you vote no on this pilot for RRGC LLC. It's for an LLC, a limited liability company. This means there are no clawback provisions, no agreements about taxation after the pilot, repayments, etc., that can be guaranteed. An LLC can be liquidated and dissolved. If UND takes ownership of the properties, it becomes tax exempt. Sure, you go from zero to something here, that something being less than $40,000 per year. You also go from a zero to something for expenses. After a per pupil payment, you still have an expense of about $4,000 per student. The city continues to tell us we have new families coming to town. If you just have a handful of families moving into this apartment complex, you're already upside down financially on this deal. 10% is not better than nothing when your expenses are also increasing. Will you cut more teachers, music and arts programs, paras? What will you cut? You won't be able to raise taxes enough on the rest of us. You're capped at 3%. Don't give away new uncapped growth via this pilot. This pilot vote is life-changing for me. This pilot would unfairly impact my livelihood to my substantial detriment, and most likely I would go out of business. Indoor golf simulator rental is my core business. Mr. Berian answered Dr. Dunnigan's question last meeting. He did the best job of telling you exactly why you should vote no on this pilot. They will not remove golf simulators from their business plan. They cannot remove them. They need them. He needs to have my business to make the rest of his business plan succeed. They need simulators during inclement weather. Exactly why I started Albatross. Indoor golf during inclement weather. They also need simulators to feed the bar and restaurant. Competition for every single bar and restaurant operator in town. Burien talked about market analysis and there being room for more facilities in town. There is no room. If there was room, they would have a successful business plan without a massive tax break. Now, UND, city, a developer are doubling down. Not only compete unfairly with a tax incentive, but now lock up a user agreement with you to take away more business from me and other hospitality businesses. This quid pro quo user agreement, a user agreement in exchange for a pilot vote, certainly appears to violate state procurement law, not putting a user agreement out for RFP. Trading a $200,000 tax break for a user agreement doesn't seem fiscally sound or legally sound, unethical at a minimum. For $200K, I could give you the majority of my T-sheet for the entire winter if you're looking to do that. This isn't a UND project. It's not the same as UND's Fritz Pollard, Albright Field, or the Hislop Pool. It's not a public amenity or a UND facility. It's a private, for-profit facility, and they should play by the same rules as the rest of us. Please adhere to state statute in relation to unfair competition. Be fiscally responsible. Don't be bullied by UND or the city. Do the right thing and vote no on this pilot request. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelsey Dodd.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here tonight to express my opposition to the 90% 20-year pilot for the Ray Richards Golf Course development. Many elected officials tell us that this project does not represent competition. It is not competition for other multifamily property owners, for existing indoor golf facilities, or for bars and restaurants. Mr. Burien told us during the special meeting that there is, quote, not a lot of squeeze with this project and that most developers would be, quote, running for the hills. When asked if he could remove the indoor golf simulators from the business model as it directly competes with a local business, he informed us that he cannot. During inclement weather, which anyone who lives here knows that it is at a minimum December through February, they need simulators to feed the bar and restaurant. If this development wants to take the risk with slim margins on tech-based golf and a restaurant, they should have to do it on equal footing with the businesses they are directly competing with. Anyone who works in the gamified golf world or owns and operates a restaurant can tell you that they are not a get-rich-quick scheme, or even a get-rich scheme in general. They are hard work and typically passion projects. Next, it has been pointed out that the school district could potentially lose money with this pilot should multiple new families move into this housing development. On the radio this morning, Dr. Brenner said it was his assumption that these units wouldn't be new folks coming to the community, so he is not concerned about new costs with this development. Essentially, those occupying this building would be coming from other rentals in town. This is interesting to me because we either have been misled by the city about the need for housing due to all of the new growth, or if the assumption is correct and tenants are pulled from other properties, we have just shown you how this project would be in direct competition to other multifamily property owners. Lastly, I want to address the, quote, educational partnership opportunities discussed in the memo you were given. It mentions field trips, educational experiences, access to technology for instruction, potential access for golf teams, and so on. The details of these commitments are not laid out. We do not know if there's a cost, if these services would be free, what follow-through there would be, and for how long. They are sweetening the pot because they know that only paying 10% of their property taxes for 20 years is well worth it. If an agreement comes to fruition between this private for-profit development and GFPS due to a yes vote, it would be unethical at best, and quite frankly, it turns my stomach. And it further drives home the issue with this pilot application, the issue of competition and the impact upon existing businesses, which could be to their substantial detriment. I do not envy this school board. Many of you have inherited an impossible situation with the budget. Many of you are new to the conversation surrounding pilots. But it is your job to do what you feel is right for the students in our community. 20 years is a very big commitment, even with a 10 and 15-year look back. A yes vote has implications for multiple generations of our students. If you can't stand behind this with 100% certainty, it is not a risk worth taking. Thank you.
Very good. Right on the buzzer. Okay, Jody Carlson.
Thank you. I'm Jody Carlson. I have not spoken before the school board before, so thank you for having me. Welcome to the new members of the school board. I'll try to talk fast. I've been fighting what I believe to be illegal tax abatements for about 5 years now, since the start of Fufang. The wheels turn slow with knowing and understanding the consequences. Look at the COVID vaccine. 20-year abatements and pilots are new to this group since Mayor Bochensky took office. They didn't happen prior to him. There has never been a 20-year abatement prior to that. We have no look back yet to see the long-term consequences of those decisions. I created a questionnaire that I emailed to each of the school board members. Hopefully you all had time to consider how you would answer those questions, but I do want those questions and answers on record. The first question I have, for those of you who don't know, Article 10, Section 18 of the North Dakota Constitution, I'll put it in a nutshell, essentially says that no political subdivision shall loan, give its credit, make donations to, or in aid of any individual, association, or corporation except for reasonable support of the poor. Do you believe this is constitutional? In order to approve the pilot, you need to answer yes to that. Due to the failure of local government to submit a formal request made by many citizens to our Attorney General, do you believe that North Dakota Century Code has been properly and legally interpreted? You must answer yes. Do you understand that corporations are began as well as dissolved monthly through the Secretary of State? Do you have absolute faith that this development will never, or at least for the next 40 years when most of us will no longer be here, dissolve their LLC and have the project returned to the ownership of UND, which will continue their tax-exempt status? Where's the clock? 1 minute, okay. Fourth, do you believe that the school board has the legal ability to enforce a usage agreement, which to me seems a little bit like a bribery offer, but with a private developer? I can't answer that question, but hopefully you can, and the answer should be yes. During your joint meeting with the city council members, county commissioners, and developers, Ms. Olszewski posed the question, who are the investors? Mr. Burian responded, and I quote, "We have not finalized that yet. If the incentive process is successful, then we will finance where our equity comes from," unquote. Are you convinced that Baker Tilly had the proper information and the ability to do a full and comprehensive analysis of the project as they stated in their presentation without having the equity investment information available to them? You have to answer yes. Do you believe that this project provides zero local unfair advantage to other local businesses such as bars, hotels, such on, and that do you believe it's fair and just to place the financial burden of city services on the citizens? And do you believe that the school board can continue their mission, vision, and values in providing the services without receiving this tax money and without impacting further taxing of the citizens of the community? And I believe you need to answer yes to all those questions in order to say yes to the pilot. Sorry I went long. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Eric Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Eric Murphy, Representative District 43, Grand Forks. So, we've got a lot of development occurring in District 43. A lot of it is athletic oriented, the new All True Sports Center. We have the new Children's Museum, okay? And we have a nationally recognized BMX track out at the Hugo Raceway. This adds a new dimension of the 42nd corridor, so to speak, with regards to the Top Tracer golf facility. This project has demonstrated, and you may recall that I wrote a viewpoint on this, really demonstrates the ability of a large entity like the University of North Dakota and President Armacost's office to listen to and seek input from neighbors and other stakeholders in the area to determine how this project should progress. So in this case, they made radical changes and they moved the facility to for the golf facility to one side of the golf course, right, the southwest corner, and on the northeast corner, they reduced the number of apartments to, I believe it was 169 or 167. Okay, that's great. So now we're talking about the pilot. Everybody's worried about the pilot. Well, the bottom line is currently, and we've heard, that, you know, you're $14,000 roughly ballpark to educate a student, except that's not really the number. We all know that adding 10 students to an elementary school across grades is not going to cause any increase in staffing, teachers, use of electricity, or other utilities. It's just not going to happen. But what will happen is, if 10 students are added, is you'll get about $84,000, $85,000, $86,000, depending on what your allocation is for the state aid payment. That's reality. No new 10 students, no new $86,000. And on top of that, you're supposed to get about 38% of the tax revenue, which my calculation today was $51,000. And so, you know, this is about future. It's not about the past. It's about looking forward and doing what's best for the greater Grand Forks community. So I look forward to hearing your debate on this. Certainly it's a controversial issue, but I stand here in full support of moving forward with a pilot for the Ray Richards golf course project. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody that's in the room for coming. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate everything you said for us, or to us. It certainly will help us in making our decision later in the meeting. I want to move to our next agenda item, which is the superintendent's recommendation for discussion. And the first one is the boot camp. And I'm going to take that one. There were, for those in the audience who don't know, the State School Board Association offers an online boot camp, which goes over kind of some beginning ideas and thoughts for new members of the school board. And there were 4 people who registered for it and attended it, and I myself was included. And they all said that I can talk for them. So some of my takeaways from this meeting were, number one, that it's important as a school board to set clear priorities and goals for the school board and to prioritize the student outcomes. And I think that's something that I personally want to see us do more, is establish more firm goals for this school board so that we know what we're working towards. They said one of the pitfalls of being on a school board is sometimes school boards sit back and they don't take responsibility for their votes and let the superintendent take the flack for it. So that's something I want to bring up to us, is that decisions we make here at this board are our decisions and don't necessarily need to fall in his lap. They said at great school boards come prepared. The meeting should not be too long or too short, that we should show mutual respect, and we do have our norms which we look to make sure that we're doing that, and that we respect the community. And that's something that I personally feel we need to work really hard on. And that would be kind of my wrap-up of it. Is there anybody else who attended the meeting online who would like to add anything from the board? Don't all speak at once. Okay, hearing none. We'll move to the next agenda item, which is the Office of Special Ed and Rehabilitation Services. This is a national organization, and they had an online briefing, and I attended that as well. What they basically were talking about is the federal government has 14 separate contracts, and they're taking all the departments of education and filtering them out to these 14 different departments, and then they will do away with the Department of Education. One of their thought processes in that was that the federal government just allocates funds. They don't set standards. They don't set any type of guidelines. All they are is a monitoring agency. They just look to see that the funds were dispensed appropriately by the states. Those 14 contracts, and I think some of you might find this interesting, is the Department of Labor will be in charge of all the technical adult education and all the K-12 programs. The Department of the Interior will be in charge of the American Indian education. The Department of State will take care of foreign language. The Department of the Treasurer will manage the student loans. The Department of Justice will handle civil rights, student privacy, training, and advisory. And the Department of Health and Human Services was assigned special education and school safety. And I personally think this is going to be a challenge for those departments to add this new dimension to their scope. Again, they said that nothing will change. The same people will be doing what they've always been doing, but they'll just change their office to where it's located. They also said that they were going to be the monitoring. Well, the U.S. Department of Education recently issued its latest performance evaluations for states implementing the Individuals with Disabilities Act, which is known as IDEA, which covers school-age children from birth to 21. This evaluation found that there were 4 states who had improved in their monitoring and in their allocation of special ed services. However, there were 7 states, including North Dakota, who experienced a decline in their rating because they aren't facilitating the special ed services and they are not in compliance with federal regulations. So I just thought that that was interesting and something that I want to make sure that we as a school board are aware of as we start into this next legislative session. I gave you all copies of my notes from that meeting, plus I gave you a chart that they gave us, which outlines what the federal government will be in charge of as far as education, what the state will be in charge of, and what the school district will be in charge of at the district level. So if you have any questions, you can look at that chart. Are there any other questions for me on that? Dr. Lund?
Just a quick question, Janelle. On the decreased rating for IDEA, that was a state rating, that wasn't talking about individual school districts.
Absolutely, that was a state rating. And I think we talked about briefly that what we're seeing is that the per pupil amount that the state pays us for general ed for kids in general is so much. And in the past, the state has done something where they prorate special ed kids. If they're in what we call a setting A, we get so much more money, B a little more, C a little more, D even more. Well, the state has rolled back on that, and now we're getting the same amount for every student, whether they have special ed services or not. And special ed services are extremely expensive. You have your OT, your PT, your paras, your speech, your behavior specialists. It's very expensive. And I am going to be working with Ryan to put those figures together so that we can make a presentation to the legislature to let them know that they are not adequately funding Grand Forks and they are not adequately funding any special ed district in the state. Any other questions? Okay.
And just to add to that, thank you, President Bakke, for that. Public Law 94-142 was enacted in 1973, 1974 by the federal government, and the federal government gives us 8% of funding for special education students. 8%. It's a federal mandate, but only 8% comes to the school district. So, thank you.
And I think the state only gives us 2%, right?
Well, there's a metric on top of the foundation aid payment that we're working on trying to increase that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the superintendent's recommendation for action, the consent agenda. Under the consent agenda are the minutes from the last meeting, teacher appointments, and open enrollment applications. Are there any questions? Hearing none?
I'll move to accept the consent agenda.
All right. Jay moved accepting it. Is there a second?
I second.
Lori seconded. You may take the roll.
Hall,
Yes.
Clevin,
Yes.
Lund,
Yes.
Manley,
Yes.
Flynn, Kramer,
Yes.
Dunnigan,
Yes.
Adams. Yes. Baki.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Thank you. The next thing on the agenda is a discussion of the child nutrition meals. And Ryan, I believe you're going to take that?
Yes, thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Each year, we are federally required to increase our child nutrition meal prices by at least 10 cents, as we are a school that currently is charging full pay students. So you can see that listed out in the memo here. The USDA target rate for lunch pricing to cover anticipated food and labor costs is $4.16. And again, USDA regulation requires us to raise lunch prices a minimum of 10 cents. You can see there are different average meal prices for lunch at elementary, middle school, and high school, along with breakfast prices for the same levels as well. Addition to the memo, there are some historical prices here and some comparison numbers to other school districts throughout the state. And you can see that on that first table there, that comparative to the average price throughout the state of North Dakota, Grand Forks is on the lower end of charging those so that we are able to make lunch and breakfast affordable to all. You can see also there are some history of meal prices there that we are holding pretty steady for a long time there. And then the recommendation is to increase elementary lunch and breakfast, secondary lunch and breakfast, 20 cents as well. So administrative recommendation is to increase elementary breakfast, elementary lunch, secondary breakfast, and secondary lunch by 20 cents each. Change adult breakfast to $2.10 and adult lunch to $4.55.
All right, are there any questions for Ryan? Dr. Lund?
Ryan, can you just educate us about what happens if a family can't afford to pay for their lunch or breakfast?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Lund. Members of the board, so there's a process for the free and reduced form that family members can elect to fill out. What that form, and I'm not going to remember the exact income levels in which you qualify for, but essentially it's free or reduced lunch. And so free lunch is you are not required to pay for lunch. You will get that lunch or breakfast for free. And then a reduced level is 50% of the meal price.
Just a quick follow-up. How about the people that aren't on free and reduced and have a bill of $40 or something like that? Do we not have policies in place where they aren't denied meals and things like that? And we also have a program through the foundation that helps pay for those.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Lund. Yes, that is also an option as well. Oh, Wendy is here. Thank you so much. Yes, please.
Hi, Wendy. Do you want to field that question for us?
I can talk really loud, though. I just thought maybe you'd want some help as I was hiding behind this nice curtain. So we do have things in place, Dr. Lund. So we serve the same meal as everybody else if we see a negative balance or no payments in there. Really, nobody knows either except for the person at that terminal right then. You can't see over the terminal, no other kid. Really, they're not even paying attention because they're all busy playing in line with each other, so it doesn't really matter. So we do have that policy, though, and we do follow it pretty strictly. So you're welcome.
Anyone else? Yes, Jay.
All right, thank you. Probably for Mr. Gatsky, on the recommendations table on page 2, the adult breakfast last year is $2.60. This year proposed $2.10. Why would we reduce it? I mean, it's a great gesture, but could we keep it steady?
Can I answer that?
Whichever, yes.
President Bakke and Member President Clevin, So I had to figure that out because it was kind of weird. So for 25, 26, that was the very first year that I had asked for increased meal prices. And I was unaware that there's an adult meal pricing tool. So when I look back to the letter, almost exactly what I sent for last year, it looks like that we had asked for 15 cents last year and you all approved 20 cents, so thank you. But the adult meal pricing was $2.20, I believe, and it just got added to the $2.40. Happened with lunch too. We just added 20 cents. So this year, I was at a back to school meeting with the state and they said, don't forget to fill out your adult pricing calculator and your paid lunch equity tool. So I put everything in, and that's why breakfast is the way it is, because it was legit this time. And didn't get added the 20 cents in there.
So basically, $2.10 covers the cost of preparing that meal, serving the meal. Like, that's not a subsidized rate.
Correct, correct. And also to add to that, when I looked at that, so last year the state said that adult meal price should be 98 cents or more than your highest student meal price. So when I compare, it was $1. So it probably just got caught, meaning it was meeting what the state said. So that is why. But I suggested we go back to be fair. So. Yes.
Anyone else? Bree?
Ryan, I remember during school board orientation, Brandon threw out the number, and I think it was like 180,000 is what the district covered in school meals last year for parents who were unable to pay. Is that right?
I'm not going to recall that number. But as Dr. Lund had asked the question of what programs we have in place, the foundation does aid in that unpaid balances at the end of the year.
So theoretically, if a family can't afford the increase, the district will still cover it.
They will, so if they're not on free and reduced lunch, and if they are a full paying member for prices and their balance runs negative, if we have run through the exhausted the foundation aid payments as well, then Fund 50, a different fund than Fund 10, would cover that cost.
Thank you.
Dr. Brenner, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Yeah, to answer Board Member Hall's question, it's 100,000 or a little bit less than that. But we are seeing people who can afford to pay choose not to pay, and that's on the heels of COVID when lunch was free for everybody, breakfast and lunch was free for everybody for 2 years, and the federal government stopped paying. People got accustomed to that, and we just had people say, we're not paying. So we do cover that.
I do want to put in a plug for teachers. I know that I always had a cupboard full of breakfast items for the kids who came without breakfast, and there are a lot of teachers who, if they find out one of their students doesn't have money in their account, they will put their own personal money in the account if the parents don't come through. So there are a lot of teachers that do that, and I know there are some PTOs that will have a fund where they pay for that. And that's, I guess the question I have for you, if this bill that's out there, or this initiated measure that's on the ballot for November passes, where all school lunches are free, how is that going to affect the district as far as all that money? I mean, does that then go into the general fund or that we've allocated for those services, or how does that work?
I think there's still a lot of questions behind that measure, as we don't know the state's funding source for that and how that will affect if they're going through foundation aid payment or another avenue for that. There's still questions as to how that will all be funded from the state.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board? Yes, Amber.
I just want to provide a little bit of history because I don't, and please fill in the gaps, but for the new board members, last year when we got the request to increase meals, there hadn't been one done since the 2017-2018 school year. And we were far below our peers. You know, certainly it's not, you know, we don't need to compare everything. And I think we all feel the pains of, you know, putting burden on families in terms of increasing costs in general. But we also did a lot of work, you know, between 2016 and 2021. You know, there was a time where students who were low on their balance were sort of stigmatized with a stamp. And so this board had created a policy about not doing that. And then we said, well, if a student is low on funds, they can have a sun butter sandwich. And then we also removed that and said they can have any hot meal that they want. And so I think there's also been a lot of other conversations that maybe some of the newer board members haven't been privy to, but it's important to note that we've come a long way in terms of, you know, certainly we would never encourage anyone to not pay their bill, but we also had a conversation about not sending people to collections. And, you know, that was something that was important to the school district too. I do know, and I'm aware that the school district makes attempts to have conversations with those families, especially if they're not on free and reduced lunch and maybe there's some notice of they're behind on funds, and having a social worker reach out and things too. So I think as a school board and a district, we've really tried our best to make sure that everyone is fed a hot meal no matter what. And to Jonelle's point, as a parent of the school district, we frequently get requests, not as a have to, but certainly a want to, that, you know, the teachers say if there's anyone who wants to provide a variety of snacks for our kids during the day, those are things that PTO and families, I always see people bringing in Sam's Club boxes of snacks too. So I certainly think that this is a community effort to keep kids in our community fed and well nourished. I know United Way is also a partner with the backpack program. So certainly seeing an increase in general feels like a gut punch, like we have to do another thing to families. But I'm also pleased to see that we're significantly lower than our peers around the state as well. And we've been able to maintain a pretty slim fee for those families. So.
Mary.
I have a question for Mr. Gatsky. What was our loss? Did we have a loss last year on our lunch programs?
In terms of unpaid
Like
balance?
money in, money out?
Or are we talking about Fund 50, the Child Nutrition Fund?
The Child Nutrition Fund.
We saw an increase. I apologize. I'm not going to remember the exact dollar amount. There was a slight reduction in the memo. The USDA, where is it here? They essentially want you to have a fund balance of 6 months of expenses, and we have that. We have more than that.
Any other questions? Elise?
I wanted to echo Amber's point about the former board making the change to away from like sun butter sandwiches. I was teaching at the time. I think I was doing lunch duty with Mr. Olson. Hey, and we would see children choose not to eat, and you know, you'd quietly convince, like, come here, I'll get you, and no, leave me alone, absolutely not. And so I do think that that was a really great decision to the former board. Thank you for that. I know that we have lower costs than our neighbors. I still do think this is going to hurt some families, and so I appreciate that we have that policy in place, but I just want to recognize that even 20 cents a meal can be really hard in our current economy. So I just want to recognize that as we move forward.
Thank you. Anyone else? I would entertain a motion to accept the price changes in the child nutrition meals. If anyone would like to provide that motion.
So moved.
Jay, a second. Mary? Any more questions? You may take the roll.
Clevin?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
Manley? Flynn? Kramer? Dunnigan?
Yes.
Adams?
Yes.
Hall?
No.
Baki?
Yes.
HS, 1 no, 0 absent.
Okay, moving on to the next agenda item. It's the consideration of the addition of the JV hockey, girls hockey. Okay.
Activities Director Mike Biermeyer is here tonight to respond to any further or follow-up questions based on the memo that you have in front of me. And also there's a memo behind my memo from Activities Director Biermeyer to respond to any questions. But just to provide some context and highlights, at the July 28th board meeting, Mr. Biermeyer, Tyler Nelson, Athletic Director at Red River, and Tony Bina from Central High School encouraged the board to consider adding a junior varsity girls hockey program that would be part of the Knight Riders girls hockey program. There is community-wide support for this, from Grand Forks Youth Hockey to parents of girls who are playing in the 15U division that falls under Grand Forks Youth Hockey. And this would give our student athletes another way to put on a Knight Rider jersey and play for their school. So relative to all that information, the administrative recommendation, considering the educational and developmental benefits for student athletes and recognizing the support of both the school district activities and athletic leadership team and the Grand Forks Youth Hockey Association, and acknowledging that this is a cost-neutral endeavor, I respectfully recommend the approval of the establishment of a Knight Riders girls junior varsity hockey team, beginning with the 26-27 season. And again, Mr. Biermeyer is here to respond to any questions.
I think the important thing to remember that we learned at the last meeting is this is called cost neutral, meaning that there will be no additional cost to the district. Is there anybody that would like to comment? Jay?
Thank you. Cost neutral this year and every year going forward, correct?
That's how I believe it
I
will work out.
I see a thumbs up from the first
Yes.
table back there.
So I think this works because we have a very good activities directors, both of them, our athletic director, and they all three know they're going to be watched closely on this. Because I don't think we're in a position to accept a cost from this, especially when there's a very good competing option for the same age group and same demographic doing the same sport. And that's why this is going to work, because they are very honest, very trustworthy people. So.
Well, and I think the athletes themselves want to compete for their schools and want to be a part of their school community in their competition. So I think that's another thing that's going to make it successful, is that the girls are excited about it as well. Anyone else? I will entertain a motion that we accept the addition of the JV girls hockey. Mary made the motion, a second, Bree. And any more questions? You may take the roll.
Manley? Yes. Flynn? Yes. Kramer?
Yes.
Dunnigan?
Yes.
Adams? Yes. Hall?
Yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Lund? Baki?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Well, the next agenda item is the one that you're all here for. So here we go, the consideration of the application for the tax incentive pilot. Before we begin that, I reluctantly, I will have to say, would like Todd to come to the mic. At the last meeting, we asked some questions, and we also had some heartburn over the 20-year pilot or tax abatement. So he is here to address those two concerns and, give us a real brief explanation of your answer to those. If you need to put them back in order, please feel free, Todd. Oh, he's going cold turkey. Okay. We just want some answers to those questions we had. We also had asked about the usage for our student athletes and our students in general. So if you could address those concerns, then we will open up our board discussion.
Sounds good. President Bakke and members of the school board, thanks for having us again this evening. We've been listening and wanted to react in a positive way about what we're listening and hearing to. So, over the years, this development agreement, which the city is responsible for, essentially when the tax incentive is approved, the city attorney works on a development agreement that, specifies all the legal parameters as part of the incentive itself, but a broader range. And so one of the successes, I think, of Memorial Village 2 was one of the requests for the school district is, and in the park district, in community sports groups, where they were able to use the Pollard Athletic Center, and they wanted to be able to continue to use that facility. And when we approved the pilot for that Memorial Village 2, which also included a Grand Forks Growth Fund loan, $2 million loan to help complete the Albrecht softball field, it was a perfect opportunity for us to put some additional requirements on UND. And of course, President Armacost and UND were gracious and thoughtful on wanting to memorialize the usage of the Pollard Athletic Center, new usage at the Albrecht softball complex, and then also the memorial track and turf that they've constructed. So that we got that done as part of that. And as with these tax incentives, you always want to be able to give something back to the public, and that's what we were able to do in that case. What we heard from you is regarding this would be a real positive for your golf teams, just like the UND men's and women's golf team for your boys and girls golf team. And then also what we heard is for youth groups that currently are going down to Fargo to the Sweet Shots facility. And obviously it would be more economical if we could, those same school groups could conduct some of these activities at that. So I know that Steve Beering on behalf of the development team met with Terry or Dr. Brenner. And so we want to make sure we were committed that as part of the development agreement that we would memorialize that as part of an agreement. And in this case with Memorial Village 2, those three facilities were all UND. I think the one addition in this case is that we'd also want the developer to sign on to that usage agreement along with UND. And so we wanted to make sure that we would follow up on that as part of your hopeful approval this evening, that we'd do that. The other thing we heard, and I think the first time when I talked to board member Adams, she said, she told me 20 years is a long time, Todd. And President Bakke, we talked about 20 years is a long time. And, I guess we could have given the old legendary Earl Strinden line about making the wood pile a bit higher for next generations, of which I think we're doing. But we thought, in talking, not only hearing from the school board, but with the county commission also, that's a long term. And the mayor reached out and asked what could we do, and we did meet up with the developer and said, is there a look back provision that we can do at year 10 and year 15? The developer has agreed to do that, and essentially right now, and I think Dr. Brenner put some of that information in there. Right now, the reasonable rate of internal return for the projects for the apartment complex, it was 6 to 9.5%. And for the top tracer was 6 to 10%. So when you see the 6% to 9.75, it's averaging those two portions. Both projects right now, if you look at individually or combined, they're in the lower 6% rate of return. So they're in the lower portion of the rates of return. But we propose on year 10 is that we would have, based upon, having Baker Tilly take another review and see how it's performing. And if it's performing above that mark, that it would be an opportunity to reduce the pilot. We'd also do it again at year 15. And what we thought is to give this project a runway of 10 years, and then it should be at a point where it's really solidified as a project, and it would be a good opportunity to do that. So that was really an attempt to make sure that the only guarantee on this pilot subject to all the conditions we're going to put into the development agreement, is it's a 10-year and at 90%, but at 10 years, it's going to get re-reviewed, and then at 15 years. And we thought that would help satisfy some of the concerns about, putting something on autopilot for 20 years. So those are the two major things that we heard from both the school board, and we know on the usage, but I think on the term, we heard that from the city council, even though they did approve moving forward with it 5-2, but we also heard that from the county commissioners too. So we just wanted to truly say that we listened and to follow through on those matters.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Todd briefly?
May I?
Yes, Jay.
Thank you very much. There's lots of bullet lists here in the memo from Dr. Brenner, but do any of them give assurance that should the businesses go defunct and no longer can pay tax, are there any provisions in here that provide relief back to the tax assessing entities under a default?
Board Chair Bakke and Board Member Clevin, I'm going to ask Mr. Gossett, our city attorney, to come up, and he'll have more of the legal authority to respond to that question.
Thank you, President Bakke and School Board Member Clevin. There is you'll notice in there that we put in a provision that talked about that there be adequate security. There's a host of things that could be done. There could be guarantees, there could be calls for possibly even UND backing the payment in the event, because you got to keep in mind, in the event that the business, it goes out of business, that would be an event where the pilot terminates. So going forward, the pilot doesn't exist. In addition, we'd put in adequate securities to assure that those tax incentives that had been enjoyed for that period of time, let's say 6 years, that and if the property then becomes tax exempt, no longer subject to property taxation, then that clawback provision to recoup those tax incentives for that 6-year period of time would kick in. So we'd, I haven't drafted the exact provisions yet, but those are the things that would be contemplated in the negotiation and getting that set up to assure that there's sufficient security to recover those dollars.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I have one question. In here, it says the pilot term commences with the first tax year when structures are finally completed, but is subject to full property taxes during construction. Does that mean that we will be receiving property taxes when they're in the construction phase of this project?
Board President Bakke, you are correct. So I think one of the graphs that City Finance Director Maureen Storstead showed, if you look at that, it bumps up in the first couple of years during construction, and then it goes back down when it would be final completed. So that's that bump up. And so what the state statute says is that it's fully taxable under construction. And so what our city assessor, Tammy Lazur, does each year prior to final completion, she goes out and does an estimate of how fully complete it is. And so in this case, I think the entire project, it's about a little over $2 million of land value. And remember, that's 100% taxable no matter what. And then the improvement itself between the apartment complex and the top tracer is about a $31 million taxable value. She's going to go out there on that $31 million, take a percentage of what she thinks that is done, and then whatever that percentage of that $31 million is going to be fully taxable until it's finally complete. And I think the state did it for two reasons. They did it for the private developer, number one, to get the project done. Number two is that they wanted to assure that you would get the full incentive upon final completion. And so, for example, right now we're working with Agresto. So Agresto is going to be it's a $1 billion investment. We'll just say for math's sake, half of that is taxable. That's $500 million. They're probably over a 3-4 year period of time. We're going to see significant tax revenue increases because of that over that time period, but it also incentivizes Agresto to get that project done. because right now, all the entities agreed to a 90% pilot on that particular project. So they do get, just when during construction, Tammy Lazur does get calls like, oh my goodness, I got a pretty big tax bill, and we cite to them, hey, you're 100% taxable until you final complete.
What is the length of time from the start to the end of the construction? Are we looking at 2 years of full tax, property taxes being paid before the 20 years or the 10 and 15-year look backs?
I think there are proposals on both projects for them to be completed in 28. And so I think if you look at the tax year, 27 and 28 are going to be incomplete, and 29 likely would be the first potential year that it would be under the pilot.
Okay, and Ryan, what would that mean as far as tax money that would be coming to the school district from that? Those, when they have to pay full taxes?
Thank you, Madam President. Just as Todd was saying there, during the construction phase, I think based on the estimate provided by Maureen, that was roughly, I'll say $100,000. I don't remember the exact number. Oh, perfect.
I think
Thank
she's
you
there
so
to
much.
tell us. I'm sorry for putting you on the spot.
You're good.
That's just, I heard my name for help. So if you remember last week, I believe, or following your last meeting, I sent out an email with some numbers, some attachments and spreadsheets, and that information was in there. Granted, this is all based on estimates, but like Todd said, it's fully taxable during construction. What we had in our numbers after speaking with Ms. Lizer and the developers is, for assumption purposes, we have the first year 50%. So 50% value we have shown as fully taxable, with the second year actually, for our estimate assumption purposes, we show the pilot starting then with the start of that 20-year. Once again, land 100% taxable the whole time. So I'm just going to grab the sheet here. I'm going to set this down. I just give you that? Thank you. I should have more hands. So I had that broken out by taxing entity in that handout. But for instance, the first year, based on a 50% value, we would estimate, okay, roughly 300,000, that's for all entities, and the estimate for the school portion of that would be roughly 114,000. And then we reflect in that spreadsheet the start of the pilot the year following for that 20-year period. So when you look at the graphic that I sent, you'll see, like Todd referred to, that first year a bump and then come back down. That's just reflecting during construction, 100% taxable, pilot kicking in, and then we have a 1% growth factor going forward. Thank you.
And maybe Chair Bakke, while Maureen's up here, and I sent out an email to Dr. Brenner today. There was questions a couple weeks ago from Member Flynn, and on the beacon, and I know you sent a check over. Maybe you could just give an update on that, about kind of where we're at with that.
Yes, so based on previous tax increment financing that had been approved, project that did not move forward. We did not sell a bond for the beacon, but we did collect 3 years for that 80% increment. So the money that the city had collected, roughly $416,000, the city did issue that back to the county. So now the county, based on that termination of the TIF, will redistribute those funds based on the appropriate shares for all the entities.
Amber, do you have any other questions? Okay.
I have a couple questions. I'll try to ask both of you since you're standing up here. The 10-year and 15-year financial review, since the first, we're really talking about year 6 through 20 here. So since year 1 through 5, sunsets at year 5, and then it would continue on, why not do a 5-year review and then a 10, 15?
Board President Bakke and Member Flynn, I think it was a compromise working. The first 5 years of any business is quite a challenge. To get everything up and going, And so we thought, as a compromise, using the 10-year term, the business is solidified, and you can look back over those first 10 years, was a better time period, and an okay compromise with the developer. That's how we arrived at the 10-year.
Just as a side note, I think every time we move forward with some of these projects, we learn a little more, we ask a little more questions, and I think, we've asked a lot of questions in this one, and I think it's fair to say that I don't know of any of the other pilot incentives that someone has said, like, I'm gonna open my books and show you everything at year 10. So I do find that as a compromise, and I think that that shows a lot that the developers can say, hey, here's where things are at. I'm wondering if that, we got the Baker Tilly analysis, and it's sort of had some revenue assumptions and things like that. I'm wondering if the building's equity will also be understood or included in that, because one might reasonably say, okay, you have 10 years worth of equity built in a commercial building or 2 commercial buildings. Someone can refinance and take the cash out and pay the debts off or use that as their portfolio. So curious about that perspective, if those calculations are included in what an internal rate of return might be.
Board President Bach and Member Flynn, those are all those things. So just in case, I don't think they're going to play any games in this case, but it'll be all open book, and the developer will know that. And so, you could, suddenly have extreme maintenance things in year 9 and do all sorts of things, but those will all be open book items in that regard as part of that 10-year review. Just like it was as part of and I think Baker Tilly said they were very open and transparent with all their financials.
Okay. The acceptable range for the IRR was 6 to 9.75. The Baker Tilly analysis said with the pilot that it would be around 6.3%. When we received the information from you, Todd, there was a compromise in there that said if it exceeded the higher end of that range, that they would consider laxing the pilot. One might say, if you're getting 6% in revenues after all your expenses are paid, isn't that good enough? Why don't we go to the lower end of that and have that conversation instead of being at above the 9.75 threshold? So curious about that.
Board President Bach and Member Flynn, those are very good comments, and I pondered that myself too. I think when it comes down to it, we use the range, and as we negotiate the development agreement with the developers, I think it will be reviewed. And for example, say it comes back and it's 9.0%. And if we did a review in year 10 in the internal rate of return, which would, encompass revenues and expenses, and maybe they've refinanced, maybe the rents are better than they anticipated. I think that pilot incentive will get reviewed, even if it's within that 6 to 9.75, and it will be a further recommendation if that pilot can be reduced.
Okay. And then we've talked about the length of it, and we've had people that have emailed us or reached out to us and say, I support the project, but I don't support the length. Why not 19, 18, 17, 16?
Board President Bach and Member Flynn, I think that's a good comment. The reason why 20 is often picked, because that's the maximum state law allows you to do a pilot. So you start at 20, and you really start at 20 and try to reduce the percentage as much as possible, because as we've worked on these over the years, the taxing entities have wanted as much of a percentage of the revenue up front. And so that's how we arrived at the 10%. And I think with this compromise of doing a 10-year review, I think that will solve a lot of the, why does it have to go to 20 years? Because it may go to 10 years with a modified. And so I think this is a compromise of saying it's an up to, but it's going to get reviewed in 10 years. And as you remarked, we've gotten better at these over the years and tightened them up. We've learned from others. As I was talking to Mr. Clevin today, there that case example in Fargo with the Newman Center on campus of NDSU, where a developer built a apartment complex adjacent to the Catholic Church on campus, and then it suddenly turned out to be a nonprofit. That was a kind of a highlight to us all, that we don't want to have that happen in Grand Forks. So I think that's, we heard the 20 years is a long time. We think the up to is still a measure that's appropriate, but with a 10 and 15-year review.
My last question for you, and then I have a question about the user agreement, is, you know, we've talked about sort of and I asked a question to Ms. Sorsted about the competition piece, and I did see that that was noticed already, so I appreciate that. I don't, you know, I'm trying to interpret the competition piece as, is it really competition if something existed for someone and they chose not to take advantage of it? I mean, that's a fair question, right? I don't know, you might have a comment on that. I think that's something for our boards to decide is, you know, is it a competitive disadvantage for someone if someone chose not to partake? But I do think about, you know, as we're talking about the 42nd corridor, and, you know, I drove past the Empire Townhomes the other day, and they put up 3 new buildings within the past 3 years. And I look at the district, and, you know, there's a Heartland complex right over here that was just built. And I wonder how those individuals can do that, but we're asking for a tax incentive for this. And so I question, you know, could it exist without the apartment building? Certainly we've had other apartment buildings be built, and even some of the developers on this project have built without these prior to, you know, when we started going. So curious about your comments on that, because we have seen growth and development from other people.
President Bach and Member Flynn, I agree with you. If you look at the district, which is that, you know, wonderful complex, but that was built in a lower, that was built pre-COVID. It was built in a low interest rate environment. It was in a lower construction environment. They hit the right time and right place, so that developer, Northridge Construction, did not move forward. But more recently, they have asked for, you know, to a bit of controversy for incentives. So I think that's a different time and place. I did have a conversation with a developer who is developing some of those apartments along 42nd, and I got an earful about incentives from him. And his argument was, you know, it's pretty hard, it's pretty tough over the first 5 years to get these things to cash flow, because it takes a while to get them occupied, to do all the things. I like to do it this way. And I said, that's the intent of what we're trying to do right now with a normal developments, with the current interest rate, with the current construction, to allow the 5-year pilot incentive. What we did to try to curb that, and his answer was, I don't want to do it. I don't want to have to come and, you know, ask for something. And I said, well, that's your right. You don't have to, but that's some of the reasons why, is to get people to develop. We know it's risky up front. We know it's challenging, and he reiterated all those things, but he said, I don't want to do it. And I said, that's a choice. And I think the other thing that the city council approves on the redevelopment side, so the city council approves carte blanche, really, a 5-year 100% on residential remodeling and a 5-year 100% on commercial remodeling, without any review, without any but-for tests. And some of these same developers that have been concerned about these new developments, some of those same developers are applying for the 5-year 100%, of which the city council is just granting them as a policy that it's best for us to have commercial buildings, to include apartments, to be renovated, to be updated, so that we don't have a community that's being run down.
I'd like to have one more question before the user agreement. The city can collect sales tax. We cannot. Part of that payment goes to economic development projects. What is the perspective of the city, and even legality-wise, about, is there any use of that economic development sales tax collection portion that can be used to offset what would be the payment that is given up?
President Bakke and Board Member Flynn. I know the West Fargo mayor's gotten some claim to fame by suggesting that, taking some of their existing sales tax to cover that. That certainly could be a discussion, and we certainly know the city of Grand Forks has the most revenue streams of anybody else. But I always say this, we have the most diverse portfolio and the most responsibility across the city. And really what I think the mayor and city council have focused on is growing the community and not necessarily just looking out for the city of Grand Forks' best interests. So we highlight the Ultra Sports Complex, which is a $110 million facility. It's really not in a city of Grand Forks portfolio. It really, if you go to other communities, even in North Dakota, those would be done by a school board. They would be being done by a park board. But in Grand Forks' case, those aren't going to get done in that way. So the city of Grand Forks stepped in. We had the Alaris Center sales tax. And so we got that renewed to maintain the Alaris Center and to also build this new facility. So I think the city council is trying to use the sales tax to fill gaps that are in our community, to fund things that are community oriented. And that's what cities should do. Cities should be generalists. We should fill all the gaps in the community and continue to grow the community. We're having a debate. The city council integrated arts funding as part of the sales tax. I suspect in a couple of weeks we're going to have discussion on funding human needs. That's currently not. So we're trying to use the sales tax in all these variety of ways, in a different way to fund community needs that we know the park district can't fund, the school board can't fund, or the county can't fund. And we're trying to step into areas that are non-traditional to the city of Grand Forks. And we've done more and more of that over the last 10 years. And that's all being done by the sales tax that we have.
My last question is about the user agreement, because we don't really see those. I don't think we really understand kind of what that looks like. So Dr. Brenner, Mr. Gatsky, from your perspective, curious about how those are currently written now, just in general terms, do we pay a nominal fee to rent? Certainly like access to more opportunities for state tournaments, is it per practice fee? Just kind of curious how those are drafted right now.
If we're talking about agreements that we have with the Park District, those are reviewed by our joint attorney, Laura Cobb, as attorney for us and also for the Park District. So it could be ice time, it could be field use. There's just I don't have that off the top of my head, but there are a variety of uses that the Park District allows us to participate in, usually for a fee. And certainly with the All True Aquatics and Turf facility coming online, there's going to be a new fee assessed for us because we'll close down Central Pool and we'll be moving over there for our swim teams. So that use agreement will change as well. But it's reviewed by legal before we ever bring it here and sign off on it.
Thank you very much for answering our questions and updating us. I do want to get to the discussion of the board and our vote here. So if you would, I think we're done here as far as questions. All right, we're open for discussion now. Bree?
So before we start our discussion, in an effort to educate myself and others and to maybe set the precedents, I am reading through board policy, the same that you are, and came across the board conflict of interest. And so I am an employee of UND, and we are about to discuss a project that my employer is a part of. So I reached out to Jonelle and Elise and to Dr. Brenner and Ms. Johnson, essentially to see what the policy was in relation to the pilots and the TIFs. So not surprising, there really isn't a lot of language around that because it is such a nuanced thing. So before we start the discussion, I want to state, before consideration of this item, I wish to disclose that I am an employee of the University of North Dakota. I have no financial or pecuniary interest in Activate RRGC LLC or this proposed pilot. I'm making this disclosure so the board may determine under policy BAB, which Cindy has passed out to everyone, and the applicable North Dakota statute, whether I should participate in discussion and voting.
And so now it's upon the board to decide whether we want to recognize this as a conflict of interest and dismiss her from the discussion and vote, or whether we feel this is not substantial. And I think, did you want to address the policy at all, Dr. Brenner?
I certainly can. It's in front of all of you and highlighted certain portions of it, particularly on page 1, that Board Member Hall's request would require the consent of all board members before she can conflict out or stay in. Standard procedures, each member shall vote on all items unless the member is legally disqualified and after disclosure does not receive the requisite consent to participate. Abstention or recusal is not permitted for convenience, discomfort, or appearance-only reasons. When legally disqualified, the member must follow the procedures outlined below. And this has to do with contracts requiring expenditures that perhaps doesn't apply here, and for non-contract matters, which are, quasi-legislative or quasi-judicial, a member with direct or substantial personal or pecuniary interest must disclose that interest and may not participate. So I believe Ms. Hall has indicated that nothing more is going in her pocket financially as a result of the approval or not approving this. So it's really up to the board to make a motion and a second, have further discussion, and finally vote whether Ms. Hall should continue or not continue in this conversation.
Okay. Are there any comments or any feelings one way or the other? Eric?
It's clear there's no conflict of interest in this. It's clear there's no issue as far as I'm concerned.
Is there anybody that has any further comments to make? Would you like to, Jay?
Yeah, I thank you very much. I think it's a matter of individual choice. If you feel you can't make a non-conflicted decision, and by first off bringing it up, we're being better than the normal culture, which is greatly respected. But I, like Dr. Lund, I don't see the mere employment at a very large institution doesn't rise to an inherent conflict. And I would make the motion to allow Board Member Hall to participate in the discussion and vote on the issue.
And Mary seconds. Is there any further discussion? Are you comfortable with that motion?
Flynn? Kramer?
Yes.
Dunnigan? Pardon me? Yes. Thank you. Adams? Yes. Hall?
Abstention?
You still vote?
Okay, yes.
Clevin?
Yes.
Lund? Yes. Manley? Yes. Baki?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no, 0 absent.
Well, I will now open this up for discussion. The consideration of the application for the tax incentive pilot. We'll start with Elise.
Okay. First, a question to Dr. Brenner and Ms. Johnson that we didn't cover last time. Do we have a policy in place that covers how we handle these? I was looking through policies in other districts, and like Fargo has a very extensive, well, not very extensive, but a structured policy of how they view these pilots and other tax incentive programs. And is that something, if we don't have in place, we're open to exploring?
May I, Madam President? We do not have a policy in place. We have had conversations around, are there certain pilots or TIFs that we would not want to participate in, that we would automatically say no to, but we don't have any policy in place at this point.
And isn't it lucky that you're on the policy committee?
Yay! I had a follow-up and I forgot.
Any other, if you think of your follow-up, just.
If I may follow up on that?
Yes.
Having been involved in those discussions, we don't have a policy, and basically our policy is to follow what the negotiated, how we work these out with the city and the county already. And we have worked pretty extensively on the process of hearing these. That's pretty much our policy. And I think that's the right way to do that, because I think as we're going to find out in this pilot and others, the nuance between all of them is so great that they all have to be evaluated as a case-by-case scenario. And therefore, the best policy is to do what we're doing. Hear the comment, hear the public approval, debate and negotiate the topic on hand, and then vote.
Well, we're still open for debate. Is there anyone that would like to comment? Amber?
I believe Dr. Lund said this through his comments through Jay last meeting. But maybe just wanted to have discussion on, we do have a meeting prior to the September 8th meeting, and one of our options could be to send it back one more time and ask for a best and final negotiation. So we can say yes, we can say no, or let's go back and renegotiate once more. So I see some eye rolling and head shaking in the background, which is totally appropriate, but this is our opportunity for discussion, and so curious about other thoughts on that.
I do need to bring up that I did receive a letter dated July 21st, and in there it said we had 30 days from the date of that letter to make a decision and to vote on it, or we would be considered in favor of the tax incentive. So, or in favor of the pilot. So I don't think we have the option of waiting till September because we would go past that 30 days.
Do we have a legal opinion from our attorney that says a decision could be to ask for more time?
We do not.
Okay. We don't have a legal opinion, or we can't do that? Sorry.
We don't have a legal opinion on that very question.
From my understanding, and to maybe clarify, it seems that they are adding an additional amendment to their original proposal, which to me would then restart that 30-day countdown for consideration.
That might be a question for Ryan.
Actually, for Mr. Gosted. the
Oh,
city
Mr.
attorney,
Gosted, I'm sorry.
if he's still here.
Is he still here? Oh, here, okay. Can you let us know what the legalities of that is? Oh, your mic.
Oh, got to be a little smarter than the microphone, I guess. I'm reading from North Dakota Century Code 40-05-24. And you spoke about the letter that was sent out. That's an obligation the city has to do. And then subsection 2 says within 30 days of the receipt of the letter, the affected school district shall notify the city in writing whether it elects to participate in granting the tax incentive or not. Notification from the school district electing not to participate must include a letter explaining any reason for which the entity electing not to participate is willing to negotiate the terms of the property tax incentive. So, but the 30-day period of time, you'd have to explain why, and you'd have to then request further negotiations to occur. If we do not receive a response within that 30-day period, back to your point, President Bakke, you're treated as participating in the tax incentive as has been proposed. So I'm not sure I necessarily answered the question. I don't believe that the 30-day period of time restarts itself because there's been some negotiation about certain terms and conditions.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, if we send a response to the city saying we want extended time or we're not in agreement, we want to negotiate it more, then that 30-day doesn't have any effect on the decision.
You're actually notifying the city that you are not participating. You're
Okay.
taking that affirmative vote not to participate, explaining the reasons for not participating, and then whether you're willing to negotiate the terms of the property tax incentive. So there's three items
components.
that you'd be doing.
Okay. Does that clarify it for you, Bree?
So if we agree right now as a board to put the pilot forward, it's under those original terms, the 20-year, 90%. But if we say no, then we have the option to add in this additional amendment in our negotiation moving forward.
And maybe I'm misunderstanding. I'm not understanding what additional amendments. What was proposed were items that were presented by, I think, the school district, maybe the county representatives about the length of time in doing a financial review. And during that period of time, since the last meeting, There's been discussions with the developer, and the developer has said, yes, we'll go through this 10 or 15-year financial review. And from what I understand on that is the only thing that can happen really is the tax incentive could go below 90% on those reviews if they hit those targets and that are described.
I think what Bree is asking is, do we have to have a new agreement drawn up showing those additional reviews at 15 years and at 10 years? Or is that, are we okay?
As I understand, President Bakke, as I understand the agreement as outlined in those terms that were presented to you over the course of the last several days will be within the agreement, if that makes sense.
I think that answers your question, right?
Will be, but are not currently in the agreement.
I have not drafted the document, and I am the one that prepared all those bullet points as far as what the terms and conditions are. I've drafted a number of these agreements. A lot of them have the same general terms and conditions, and there were some, these two added terms about the 10 and 15-year review were added at the, because the developer heard the comments from the school and the county that they were concerned about the length of time. And also that the clawback is now part of our development agreement as well. So that's really not necessarily a new provision, but pointing that out, so.
Just a point of clarification, I think it would be premature for you to write an agreement without the boards and taxing entities approve or deny. So I think it's an ongoing process as we have these conversations, but built-in checkpoints rather than an amendment is how I see it.
And Board President Bakke, Todd Phelan, we are asking for you to approve the 20-year 90% pilot. And what we're describing as part of our City Council approval on September 8th, that these conditions would be added into the development agreement within that term of the 20 years.
So we would be voting on it as it was presented to us the first time, with the understanding that you would make those adjustments after we vote. What's the guarantee that those adjustments will be made after the vote?
Well, President Bakke, well, there's no guarantees. You know, we do have to have, I think these are really important that you concur with the current proposed 90-year or 20-year 90% pilot. Got caught up on that one too. And that you concur with these conditions should be added into the development agreement. And we would ask of a similar recommendation from the County Commission leading up to ultimately the City Council with the goal of them approving the pilot incentive with those conditions for the city attorney to draft that agreement.
So that would have to be a part of our motion, is that if we approved it, it would be with those conditions added, correct?
I think that would be helpful, President.
Okay. All right.
No, go ahead, Dr. Lund.
Eric?
I mean, this is all written down in state law, and it does seem kind of goofy that we approve something before it actually gets finally written up. But I mean, that's the process of which it's been done. I think we probably would focus on the 20 or 90%, and we're just good faith assuming all those other things are going to be added in. But that's kind of the way it is in state law.
Well, there was a reference about what guarantees these provisions get written into the development agreement. I can assure you none of those gentlemen have ever went back on their word. And, you know, sometimes there's articles of faith and trust, but in this case, it's an article of faith and trust based on knowing all the people pretty much in the room now. We're all going to do what we said we're going to do. And it's already here in writing. And for them to try to go back against this, nobody wants to go through this. So these will be in the agreement. But yeah, our motion will include these as a provision.
Yeah, that would be my thought. Mary?
I have a question. Who hired Baker Tilly? Did the city hire them?
Board President Bakke and Board Member Adams, the City of Grand Forks, currently Baker Tilly is the city's financial advisor. And so it's consistency with the city of Grand Forks. So annually, the city goes out and sells bonds. We go out to the market with Moody's and get a bond rating. So essentially, on an annual basis, Baker Tilly is advising the city and advising the market about have your full faith and trust in the city of Grand Forks.
Okay, Madam Chair, I have another question. So if the city goes to Baker Tilly to bring this project to them to have it figured out if it's feasible, would Baker Tilly also look at the investors and stuff to see if they're able to do it without this tax incentive? I mean, can they look at it both ways and say, yeah, he can do it, you know, they have the money, they have everything, they can do it, and the city would be okay to back them with this. So, but do they look at the companies that are actually going to do this to see if they have the financial security to do it on their own without the use of the 90-20 pilot program?
Board President Bakke and Board Member Adams, they're reviewing the financials of the project. They're not going to, Baker Tilly is not going to, they're not advising the developers if this is a great idea or not. They're advising the city, and by the city, also you as public entities, is, in their opinion, what do they think this project needs to be within a certain parameters? And so that's why in their review, they're using certain parameters like the internal rate of return. They're looking at what a reasonable debt service, interest rates, all those things. They're looking at what the revenues over expenses, which rent should be. They're looking at national indicators that apply to the Grand Forks region, and that's what they're doing. They're not advising the private developer. They're advising the city of Grand Forks regarding the incentive, and so they're contracted and paid to give the city of Grand Forks their independent review of what they think this project needs to be within a reasonable range of incentive.
Well, that brings up another question. If they're doing the incentive for the city, but the city only gets the taxes from the project, they're not making any profit from the rental or the top tracer or stuff like that. And all the proceeds from the golf course will be going to UND. So the city's not really making any money on this project. We're just giving away our tax dollars, so to speak, because they're saying, yeah, this would be a good project if it went through, you know, but besides getting a great facility and an apartment building and the golf course, what does the city get besides giving away tax dollars?
Board President Bakke and Board Member Adams, we get the project, and that means we get upfront land that's non-taxable becomes taxable. We get 10% of the increment of a $31 million improvement. UND can move forward with redeveloping the golf course, and I think they got a $4 million local contractor bid to do that with Zavril and OP to redevelop the golf course. Golf course stays in play. UND's agreed to rezone it golf course, not university district, so they've already given up their zoning to do much else with it. Community gets a huge quality of life amenity. So I think it's on the upside, it's all wins. On the downside, it's a cascading negative effect of what could happen if this doesn't get approved.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open it up for discussion. Eric?
I have several random scattered thoughts. First of all is right now in last tax year, we generated zero revenue from that land. And if the pilot doesn't go through, we will continue to generate zero revenue from that land, as the city will continue to generate zero revenue. I've heard comments off and on for months and actually years because of other pilots about the legalities of all this. we've gotten attorneys' opinions on some of that, not necessarily school attorney, but city attorney. I don't think that should factor in our decision-making at all. If somebody thinks it's unfair, they can go to the courts. And that's probably where that opinion should be decided, not by 9 non-attorneys, non-judges sitting around a table. So I don't think we should factor that in our decision at all. I think the city and I think the public is well aware we have very few limited revenue levers to pull. We have the state, which we have minimal control over. We have the federal, which we have minimal control over. And then we have local taxes. So we don't have special assessments. We don't have sales tax. We don't have utility bills. So, I mean, I think people are aware that we do have a limited amount. But I go back to right now we're generating $0 and that. The only reason I brought up the idea of negotiations is if we felt that the 90% for 20 years was too steep, we could ask to negotiate, and maybe we could change it to 90% for 10 years and then 75% for another 10 years or something like that. But I actually support what they're doing. I do have a little heartburn. I wish we would start looking at lower income. You know, studio apartments of 1,200 is not low income. I wish some more of these projects would be guarded more for lower income, but that's not my decision or anything like that. And we can all thank the Bismarck entities for doing this, because before they goofed it up, state law had just the city councils approve this, and the rest of us didn't have any to say in it, but then they changed the law, and now we all get to weigh in on it. One thing I haven't heard a lot of in the public or anywhere is what happens if the pilot proposal fails. I think we've heard clearly from President Armacost and other UND people that their current model is not going to be sustainable. They're losing money every year, and so I could certainly see UND or the state, whoever ultimately owns that, selling that to a private developer. And I can tell you the neighborhood around that and the community have had a lot of input into what goes into this project. If you get a private developer in here who's not asking for government handouts, the only control you're going to have over that is zoning, and you're going to have a lot less control. So you be careful what you ask for, because you might get something worse off than that. So I'm in favor of this. It's always bugged me because we are not economic developers per se. We're important. Healthcare, education, people ask about that when they're wanting to move here, but we are not economic developers. That's what the city does. And I'm going to support this project. The only reason I would vote for opening negotiations is if it's going to fail. Then rather than just say let's fail it, we should open into negotiation. But I support this project the way it's presented.
Thank you. Anyone else? Jay.
So, like, I don't know about y'all, but I've been working on this as mental exercise for, I don't know, going on 4 months now. And I would not support passing the buck tonight and moving this on for additional discussion, because it's been discussed. And I do believe you should take honorable people at their word. And we have heard honorable people say, if we don't get the 90% pilot, this project is dead. And that's 90% pilot from all 3 tax assessing entities. I believe that to be true. And then that adds back to what Dr. Lund said. Now we've got no control, no revenue. We've got nothing. And I think sometimes you make decisions that are the best you can get, and they're certainly far from perfect. I think this is one of those. I do believe this is the best we're going to get. And I am going to support a vote in favor of the pilot with the added terms to the development agreement. One of the things, and I think several people in the room have probably heard me say this, so bear with me. I generally don't want to bloviate, but I'm going to take a little moment here. I'm a huge supporter of Grand Forks. I'm a huge supporter of having Grand Forks be Grand Forks and not someplace else. And there is no other community around that you're gonna find that big a green space on the intersection of your second and third biggest streets through town. That is uniquely Grand Forks. This pilot and these projects keep Grand Forks uniquely Grand Forks. And that's kind of where I've always come back around on this. To kind of get, we're gonna have something in the long term, and it's a 40-year land lease, if I remember right, with 2 10-year renewal options. Nothing is forever. But a 40-year land lease with the University of North Dakota, keeping it a golf course, is as near in perpetuity as we're ever gonna get in these sort of discussions. So we've satisfied the long-term interest. And to boot, we're getting $800,000 over 20 years, which the critics are right, that is not a lot of money. But it's $800,000 more than we're gonna get under Plan B. So for those reasons primarily, I'm gonna support this, and we all have our minds made up, I hope, but hopefully these are persuasive arguments somewhere along the line. And this is just the way that I'm gonna think about this project right now. Thank you.
Anyone else? Amber?
I too, like Jay, have Grand Forks in the heart of a lot of the decisions that I make and the kids in our school district. I think it's worth a point to say, with everyone staring back at us, that the school district is not in the best place financially. And if we had $20 million in our general fund at the end of the year, I think for a lot of us, this decision would be a lot easier. You know, certainly it's not all about money. It's about the conversations about how to grow Grand Forks. And I remember when Burger King was the last thing on 32nd when we first came here. And so I'm proud of the growth, even if it has been slow, that this community has made. I'll poke at Representative Murphy for a second because it's fun to do always. But, you know, it's nice to hear your opinion, especially in the district that you represent. But the state has hurt us when they took the 3% cap. And I think to feel the decisions that we make in our local community and say, we're staring at the face of increasing costs for lunch, and then we have this vote coming up, and we've been told there's possible pullback on appropriations, and then we've capped to 3%. All of those make the decision a lot harder for how to move forward. Have said publicly that I personally agree with this project. I would be a user of it, but it's been really difficult for me to get to that point because of some of the financial considerations, and because I really, you know, it's not a secret that there's people financially that can afford to do these things in our town and are asking for these things. Now, to Mary's point, I don't think it would be fair to take the developer's full checkbook and bank account and say, show me what you got, because there's also probably a lot of debt that those people are carrying because they are building a lot of things in our community. So I'm prepared to make a motion if you'd allow me to do so.
That's fine. If you make a motion, there still will be opportunities for discussion. Yes, Amber?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the Activate RRGC LLC payment in lieu of taxes pilot for 20 years at 90% with the adjustments and amendments we've talked about adding to the developer agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Jay seconds. It is still open for discussion. Mary?
I came on the school board. You guys had 4 months. We came on. There it was. You know, nobody said, hey, guess what you're going to do your first month that you're on the school board. You know, but we came in. This was there. Last year's $4 million deficit's there. We're looking at a deficit already. It's really hard to balance this out. And I ran on the thing that it was kids and teachers and our schools, that our kids need all the things. And I understand that we also need business. I've lived here my whole life. We also need these businesses to draw people in. And we do a good thing doing that, but it's hard when we got to look at what the school system loses. And right now, we're not getting anything, but $44,000 a year does not put a drop in our $1 million deficit. I'm sorry, that's just numbers to me and that type of thing. So this is really, really a hard decision. And like I said, getting this dumped on us new board members, it was a shock when we found out this was on the agenda, our very first meeting. So I just want to say that I believe in all the stuff that's going on, and I under that, but it's just too much for too long. And I just can't see us getting out of the hole. And we're not going to get out of the hole no matter whether it's built or not, because it's still there, because we won't have any taxes, or we'll have a little bit of taxes. So it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other is what it is. And I just can't. In my heart, I would love it too. I would use it. So I don't know where we're at.
Anyone else? Bree.
So respectfully, when I hear the term doing something in good faith, I have a hard time in doing it when we're talking about millions of dollars. I think to paraphrase Todd, I know he didn't mean it this way, but there really are no guarantees. Like, we don't know for certain in 20 years' time we will have those dollars in our bank account. We hope and we have good faith, but we don't know. There are no guarantees. And I think within 20 years' time, or maybe even sooner, we'll come to our taxpayers and say, we need more money. But at the same time, we're then giving a $20 million abatement to a property developer that will probably have a pretty profitable project. And although we are not lawyers, we still have the responsibility to know the law. And I can think of plenty of cases where people have sued boards for their decisions. So I do think we need to take that into account as well. I also just think this is not the best deal we can get for our kids and our teachers. I think there's something better out there, and that there's more negotiation to be done at the table. And I know the audience would like this decision to be done tonight, but I think there's still negotiation out there in a way that we can better benefit as a district from this choice.
Anyone else? Eric?
The only thing I disagree is I don't think we should go to the taxpayers for more support. We need to go to the state and the federal government. I mean, when they're mandating IDEA and they're giving us 8% to do it. So I think we should keep the taxpayers out of it as much as we can and have the state and the feds pay up what they should be paying up.
I'm absolutely in agreement with that. I think, unfortunately, the burden does fall on the locals.
Anyone else? Jay?
If I may, thank you. It kind of touches on what Brianna was talking about there. There's been some statements about, and we even heard them tonight, if we add students, we lose money. Like, I find that to be hard to believe. I find it harder to believe that we don't want students. Like, the fundamental goal of Grand Forks, of any viable, thriving community, is to add residents. And there's been not, I don't believe this has been in the public realm, but there was discussion about, well, I'll use previous pilots for an example. There were a couple that were in absolutely the worst place in Grand Forks to add housing, right next to our most crowded elementary schools. Those we didn't vote in favor of because of that impact. And it was immediate and profound. This one actually is in probably like nearly the best spot for an apartment complex to add some number of students to schools that are generally able to support it. So again, I look at this as a long-term development that will add baseline property tax growth. Despite a pilot, that growth is still something that's going to add to the property tax value. It'll increase the value of a single mill, and that's not capped. So I think that's another good reason this is a form of growth for the city. In a spot where a housing development is well suited to fit within our demographics without having to adjust boundary lines again, add classroom sections, add buildings. So I think from the perspective of teachers and students, this is a good location. And another reason why I think this is the best deal available, and we should proceed on accepting this tonight. Thank you.
Anyone else? Lori, please, Lori?
I just, I've been sitting here, I've been taking it all in, and I've talked to both sides of this project, and it's been really hard. It's just leaving a pit at the bottom of my stomach, and I don't know the right thing to do. I don't know where we go from here. I want us to always keep in mind that the students of Grand Forks should be the forefront of anything that we decide upon, and I want us to really think hard about this. That's it.
Please, Jeff? This has been a very difficult decision for me because I can see both sides of the issue. I think it's important for the community to develop, and have things like this happening. It's going to offer more employment for people. It's going to provide us more options for apartments, for the restaurants. I mean, it's all going to benefit the community, but my heartburn was over the 20 years. I just felt that was way too long. And now they've come back with this, assessment at 15 and at 10, which kind of alleviates some of that. But I'm in the same position where I could vote either way. I'm really struggling with where I want to land. But that's something I'll have to decide. Jay?
If I may again, thank you. There's been a lot of, and I very respectful, and I actually, every community needs critics and gadflies. That's how you advance discussion. And it's been great. The community, this is what I think Grand Forks does better than anywhere else. We're able to have this kind of discussion, and at the end of it, we're going to come out of it, pass or fail, we're better off for the discussion. So there's great respect for all that. But recognize, we've heard and seen a lot of critics. We've also, I hope all of us have sought out a broad range of communications on this topic. And the communications I've had have generally ranged from, yeah, I think it's great, to, I don't know, I think it's okay, yeah, I'd do it, But those it's interesting because those have all been personal, private correspondence where I've sought them out. And amongst those sought out conversations, this project's generally favorable. So I don't want people to say you're not listening to the community, because this has come up before. The community in private correspondence has been supportive of this. So I think my vote of yes is listening to the community. One part of the community that's in favor of it, and it's outnumbered the critics when I have talked to people privately. So I think that's an important point. And beyond that, I can't think of a more transparent, responsive government discourse than we're seeing on this project. We see it today with Dr. Brenner's memo about additional things added to the user agreement that are brand new to this form of tax incentive. And that's 100% in response, in my opinion, to very well thought out critics and correspondence on this topic. So very transparent, very responsive. Another reason, in my opinion, to say yes.
Oh, Eric?
Just a quick question, because it's come up several times and I don't know the answer to it. So if this project fails to go off the ground and doesn't get supported by whatever, how does that help our financial constraints in the school district? Because I've heard that from several. How does that help us financially if this project doesn't go through. I guess I'm not sure I understand how it helps us, but I've heard that comment, so I'm just curious.
Well, it would leave us kind of status quo. We would stay where we're at because we wouldn't receive any money from that property. It would remain untaxed, so we would not receive anything.
And if we had added, if that project added students, we wouldn't see those either, so we wouldn't see the aid, foundation aid, and all those other things.
Yeah, Mayor, Amber?
I can be mayor for a day, that's fine. Yeah. I don't pretend to be a real estate expert, but I might provide a real estate opinion. I talk to people every day, as opposed to 5 years ago when we would encourage people to look at their financial situation and determine that buying a house would be better than them renting. And it's not necessarily the case right now. A lot of people are paying more to purchase a house than rent in some capacity. Others, that may not be the case, but in general, the people that I work with every day. If I had to guess, there would be a very different population here that has a minority of families with young children. I think there's probably more executive people that would live in this building. There's probably more, you could get older graduate students, things like that. But for a housing conversation, I believe, and again, one opinion, that this would act as a place where people could move up because they would have access to a brand new amenity that is at or the same as what they might, or less than what they might pay for a house, which would then potentially free up more affordable housing, as we're talking about, you know, affordable, low income. And certainly this body, you know, approved to partner in the Brookstone Housing Project, which has considerations for families with more affordable income constraints. And so I think as we talk about housing, there is a constraint. We do need more of it. I think sometimes it's hard to say, well, are we building a luxury apartment building and things like that? But I do believe, and it would be my opinion, that it would free up people to move up in spaces that would create more opportunities too. So, you know, I know that's been a part of our discussion. I don't know that it would be saturated with families, if I had to guess. Certainly not a genie, but that would be my opinion.
Mary, not Mary.
I'm going to kind of play off Amber's. I was a real estate agent. People get this, and as she says, they move up. What they move up from is they move up from an older apartment building into a newer apartment building, and after basically the apartment building's built, and then usually they're sold to a Gold Mark or something like that, to a big, and then they're not taken care of because they don't, you know, they don't have the, they want profits. They don't want to keep them up. They might do the outside, but they don't do the inside. So I'm thinking that if you're going to move to an apartment building, you're going to move up, but even at $1,200 a month for the efficiency thing, the people that are trying to move up, that's going to be a struggle because, you know, they live in the other ones that are a lot less. So from a real estate standpoint, it would be a great thing. It would get people, they wouldn't be buying houses, which is what real estate agents want them to do, but it would get them into nicer housing. So, but even as a real estate point, the golf course and the apartment are for-profit institutions. They're there to make a profit off the work that they do, whether it's Topgolf or the restaurant or rents. That's where you look at it. And we're giving away our nonprofit money to help them till they could get on their feet. So that's the only thing, is that that's another double-sided sword there too that you think of. So I understand the real estate part of it that Amber speaks of.
Well, have we talked it out, or are there any more thoughts or feelings? Are we ready to vote? I'm not seeing anyone saying they want to say anything. All right, let's take the vote.
Lund? Yes. Manley? No. Flynn?
Yes.
Kramer?
No.
Dunnigan?
Yes.
Adams? No. Hall?
No.
Clevin?
Yes.
Baki?
Yes.
5 yes, 4 no, 0 absent.
So,
Yes.
Thank you for leading the discussion and the conversation. Clearly, based on the vote, this is a difficult issue. Luckily, we don't have too many 5-4 votes at this board, so.
Yeah, it's difficult. Are there, next on the agenda, are there any announcements? Okay. I don't hear any from you, Mr. Triggs? Okay. The board requests for future consideration. Is there anything else that you would? Yes, Jay.
I was, the aborted tax increment finance payments, we heard mentioned today that payment's been made to the county. Just at the next board meeting or after that payment's made, if we could just hear a acknowledgement that those funds have been received.
Okay, Ryan, have you got that? Okay. Anything else? Yes, Amber?
I have a question about having a potential presentation on our Encore services. I know, as we're talking about lunch prices and busing and things like that, as a parent, those fees also went up this year. Certainly not a board vote or discussion, but I would kind of put that in the same category as like a spa or our summer school. We don't really get updates about that. So curious about numbers, enrollment there, funding for that, things like that.
Okay.
Thank you, Member Flynn. I'll work with Kristen Vetch as our director. She and I meet bi-weekly, so we can put something together for next board meeting.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else? All right. How did we do, Lori, on our norms?
I think we did great.
We got through it and no one's killing each other. Okay. Any other comments for the good of the order? Hearing none, I adjourn the meeting at 8:13.